This character, you could argue, has been an underrated character in a lot of Smash games, not just Smash 64. They started out as an average character that was ultimately overlooked, going from being a mid-tier in Smash 64 to being a solid A-tier character at 5th place, which is a huge jump in Smash 64's 12-character roster. It's Yoshi. Many people think Yoshi is a strange character. The recovery is one of the most unique in the entire game, where you have to strictly rely on your higher double jumps to recover. Their up special doesn't really work effectively as a recovery tool. His shield is the only shield in the game that's an egg, and fun fact, it doesn't shrink in size like other shields would, turning black instead. Yoshi's weight, size, makes him easy to be comboed, and his grab is easy to punish. He has trouble dealing with pressure, his moves don't have the best range, especially compared to Kirby and Pikachu. However, Yoshi's weird traits were also part of their strengths. This weird, quirky character has some of the most unique Smash mechanics that a character can have. They're really strange. Limited double jump actually has armor, their ability to double jump cancel, which means they have access of a quick way of doing aerial pressure. They're the only character in the whole game to have the parry mechanic, where they can counterattack people that try to pressure them. He has moves like his up tilt that are incredible juggling tools. The rise of Yoshi's tournament presence allowed him to become 5th place in the most recent tier list, but people actually speculate Yoshi could rise even further to 4th due to the presence of the character in the meta and their strengths finally blossoming. They're actually a very deep character, despite what people thought initially. And this is actually not the only game where Yoshi rose tremendously in the meta, where even in Melee they were seen as a low-tier character, and now Yoshi's winning super majors. The Smash 64 and Melee versions parallel each other, both being underrated characters and then actually being significantly better over time. The character is incredibly technical, but when fleshed out in the right hands, they show why Yoshi is so good. Some of you are probably double taking on this Melee pick. I won't lie, I did too. For Melee, there's a lot of characters that were initially seen as bad, and then as time goes on, they're actually incredible characters. Look no further at Captain Falcon, Pikachu, Yoshi. However, there was one character on Melee's very first tier list that people had no idea where this character could possibly go. And yes, I know this tier list is 2 decades old. People probably didn't even know how to L-cancel that well back then. Of course, there's going to be some wild takes, but one of my favorites is Jigglypuff being a low tier at 17th place. Now, to be honest, I don't blame them. It was way back in the early 2000s. Of course, there's going to be some hot takes. Well, because Jigglypuff looking like a really lopsided character on paper, people didn't really think they had a lot of promise. She had a slow wave dash and dash dance. She can die really early. Her shield break literally does this. She was seen as way too rigid and slow on the ground. She's not everybody's cup of tea. In fact, people made a funny April Fool's tier list in 2004, making fun of the fact of, haha, what if this character became a top tier? Wouldn't that be funny? I guess be careful what you wish for, because Puff wasn't too far off in 2023, being the 3rd best character in the game. People essentially underestimated the lengths the character could be played, and they didn't completely understand the combination of her high aerial drift and her crazy disjointed aerials that would make her one of the best edgeguarders in the game. She's one of the most mobile characters in the air, and that means she can play keep away and camp if she really wants to. Her grab confirms combined with her rest make her one of the most explosive characters in the game, one of the most powerful characters, especially in the right hands. As the years went by, people began to see the rise of the character, and that would lead to even further to where we are with Puff today, where she can be played relatively defensively but also aggressive when needed. And these type of attributes and strengths are what make you a top tier in Melee. You have to be able to adapt to a specific situation quickly. Puff can do that perfectly. Oh no, Puff can die early. Well, she can KO opponents just as early if they aren't careful. At times she can push past this and live longer than other characters in the cast because she's so difficult to chase down and edgeguard. Oh no, Puff doesn't like lasers. What are we gonna do? Oh, she can crouch under it and wave dash around the lasers. Cool. Jigglypuff is a character where they just kept developing and they proved themselves in the meta and went to the point where Puff was winning major tournament after major tournament. Some people love this character, some people hate him, but it's easy to see why this version of the character is so good now. But back then, people just had so little to go off of. Puff's still out here doing their thing, making a name for themselves, as Melee Puff is the best version of the character to this day. It's crazy to think that the second best character in Brawl, the best character in the whole game, obviously right behind Meta Knight, who's been number 1 since the very first Brawl tier list, Brawl Ice Climbers were initially not seen as good as they later ended up becoming. And this isn't a game where wobbling is part of their kit like Melee, yet the Ice Climbers became higher ranked than their Melee iteration of the character. What happened here? And if you don't like wobbling in Melee, shield your eyes, okay? Because grab combos are going to be on deck. On paper, Ice Climbers in Brawl are weaker than the Melee iteration. Their moves do less damage, they can't wave dash anymore, they lost wobbling. However, outside of those nerfs, they were given plenty of buffs. Most of them didn't get fully utilized until Brawl's meta developed further. If you haven't noticed, the more technical characters get figured out a little bit later. The very first Brawl tier list, the Ice Climbers were ranked at 13th place, and they even dropped to 15th at the following tier list. They floated around 11th place, and then to be a top tier character at 5th and 7th place a few times. Then finally, 5 years after Brawl's release, Ice Climbers rose to 2nd place, where they have stayed ever since. Even on a post-Brawl community tier list, Ice Climbers have still earned their placement at 2nd best in the game. Here's what happened. Remember Ice Climbers' desync mechanic that was even in Melee? Well, in Brawl, they can still do a desync infinites. You can 0 to death any character in the cast, even in this game. And once the technique was figured out, it changed how people viewed the character. Most people thought the Ice Climbers were too weak to be a top tier, but now here they are out of nowhere doing chain grab infinites, kind of like Melee a little bit. Well, what if I told you that they actually were secretly better than the Melee version of the character? Yes, the one that was a high tier, like some sort of super soldier waiting to be awakened. Now, a lot of you might know you can actually control Nana in Brawl more than you can in Melee. Their AI was buffed, you can have more full control of the second Ice Climber, making chain grabs easier, and their Blizzard down B actually works as intended and freezes opponents earlier. The Ice Climbers matchup actually evolved very similarly to how it previously was in Melee, where the floor can be lava. If you get grabbed, it can lead to death. This is especially worse in Brawl as tripping exists, and you bet your ass if you trip, the Ice Climbers are going to get you. This is why the Ice Climbers shot up so quickly from being a mid-high tier to being the 2nd best in the game, because now they have a tool that checked a majority of the cast and put the Ice Climbers in a league of their own. This is why on Brawl's current tier list, the Ice Climbers are literally in their own tier by themselves in the S tier. This led to the Ice Climbers ironically being considered toxic because of their unique grab mechanic for 2 Smash games in a row. You might be thinking, well, why don't they just ban these infinites? Well, the problem with that is Brawl is more complicated than other Smash games when it comes to infinites. In fact, grab infinites are a big part of Brawl's meta. There's characters who have a few extra frames of grab release lag who get bullied for this exact reason. If you ban Icy's grab infinites, do you ban DDD's chain grabs too? What if people try to abuse rules around Ice Climbers infinites and then they just use other chain grabs instead? Which has led to some tournaments in the modern era actually banning the Ice Climbers in some major Brawl tournaments. A little bit of honest content advice: if you see Brawl Ice Climbers in a dirty street corner, just walk the other way. Or pick Meta Knight. You'll thank me later on that one, okay? You're welcome. They have some of the best matchup spreads in the whole game. Just run from them. This character was the very first DLC character ever, all the way back on Smash 4's hype cycle. This character was the most beloved and wanted character to return, and they were a fan favorite during Melee, where they were highly requested and actually made it into the game, but were absent during Brawl, seemingly being replaced by Lucario. And my god, I'm gonna break the fourth wall here. The Mewtwo reveal was probably one of the coolest reveals during the Smash 4 era. Competitively, Mewtwo actually wasn't a great character out the gate. This could be because a multitude of reasons. Mewtwo's overall character archetype is what you would describe as a glass cannon. Now, how much glass and how much cannon really depends on the game. But Mewtwo is normally known for being a lightweight, floaty, tall, which are huge negatives if your character doesn't have the power to back it up. This was the case with Mewtwo during the initial release. The buffs were nice, like limiting his previously terrible tail hurt boxes in Melee. He's by far leagues faster than the Melee version, and I'm not gonna lie, his animations look way cooler, and I'm just speaking facts there. But not having strong KO power is a limiting factor, especially in a game where early rage combos are a big part of how good your character is going to be. bread and butter juggling combos, and how good can you take somebody to the top blast zone. Mewtwo didn't really have enough bang for his buck, and ironically, in a game where DLC characters were known for running the later part of the meta, Mewtwo just didn't have what he needed, until Sakurai must have heard people's prayers to actually buff Mewtwo. In further updates, they began to increase Mewtwo's speed even further, making him faster than Sheik, a multitude of buffs to his overall frame data, and most notably his aerials. His smash attacks like up smash and forward smash were given larger hitboxes. They even made Mewtwo slightly heavier to improve his survivability. They really cared about making him better, giving him a slew of buffs, and it showed in his results, being used plenty more in tournaments. Although later on Mewtwo would have been outclassed by the newer DLC fighters, he still earned his spot in the cast, starting out in the F tier when he initially came out at 37th place, going all the way to 9th to later being at 10th place, which is a huge change in overall viability. One of the most buffed characters in Smash 4's whole meta. Speaking of Smash 4's meta, this character was actually good in the very beginning of the game's release. People thought this character was nerfed to the ground and was a shadow of their former self. It was Sonic. Spin Charge lost its ability to be held to the end of time. Spin Dash can't cross up shields until it's fully charged. Up Air lost its Smash 4 knockback. Sonic surprisingly was seen as a lackluster mid to low tier character when the game came out. Boy oh boy, how things were to change. Deep down, Sonic was actually very similar to the Smash 4 iteration. You could still play him like a hit and run character. His KO power was roughly still intact. Overall, he was still viewed with mixed results until Sonic was inevitably buffed during the plenty Smash Ultimate balance patches. Up tilt and dash attack received end lag decreases. Up smash had increased intangibility. They buffed the living hell out of up air by giving it an extra hitbox, so characters are less likely to fall out of up throw up air combos. His shield size was increased, back air has less end lag, and he was thrown the kitchen sink of buffs, just giving Sonic a buff after buff after buff. In fact, people began developing moves like his homing attack, which people later found out was better compared to the Smash 4 version of this move, as it now can be held longer and it deals more damage and has less end lag. And you already know where this is going, I'm sure. Sonic's playstyle developed even stronger to lean into timeouts. When you try to hold your stock or percent advantage for as long as possible, so the opponent just straight up loses. It's a playstyle that's been a part of Sonic since Brawl, but during Smash Ultimate, with Sonic's now buffed moveset, it reached new heights as well. And you already know this led to Sonic being the premier character in Smash Ultimate's well-known 2020 laggy Nintendo Online era, where people would grind out camping with the character. Ironically, this is a huge reason why Sonic is the 4th best character in the game right now. Like him or not, Sonic has proved himself to be a strong character in Smash Ultimate's current meta. Shoutouts to channel members of Honest Content and Patreon subscribers. They will always get videos early, a week before everyone else.